Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here with School Transportation News. Glad you made it to the podcast. It's brought to you by Transfinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Our friends from the Propane Education Research Council, also known as PERC, and Vera Mobility. All right, our guest a little later today is going to be talking with Taylor Akbatani. His name is Todd Livesay. He's the Director of Transportation of Franklin Township Community School Corporation in Indiana, also a winner of the Transfinder Top Transportation Teams Award. It's really cool. Looking forward to that conversation. Before we get there, we have a message from the Propane Education Research Council. All right, guys, we have a great green tip for you this week, brought to you by the Propane Education Research Council. They want to talk to you about propane. It's energy for everyone. Did you know that school buses fueled by propane can help you reduce emissions in your community while saving you money? Propane school buses have a lower average carbon intensity than electric school buses over their lifetime by more than half, and they emit up to 96% less nitrogen oxide than diesel buses. All of this from fleets with the lowest total cost of ownership. It's no wonder propane is the most widely used alternative fuel in the school bus industry. You guys can learn more at betterourbuses.com. That's betterourbuses.com. All right, Ryan, we are back. Let's talk a little bit about some of the top headlines going on out in the industry today. NHTSA, NPRM, some technology stuff going on, safety stuff going on. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, well, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration last week published a long-anticipated NPRM on rear seatbelt warning systems. So all of us in our vehicles, our personal vehicles, even in school buses at the driver position, when the seatbelt is not buckled, there is an alarm, right? And usually about 8 seconds. That's federally mandated, and it might come on periodically until you buckle up. Well, NHTSA started looking back. They published an advanced notice back in 2019, but before then had been looking at the feasibility of adding these alert systems to rear seats. So the advanced notice that they put out back in 2019, we have an article on s10online.com that yours truly wrote back then about this issue. They threw out there for comment, for all vehicles, not just passenger vehicles. That would include school buses. So after a few years and a pandemic later of gathering all these comments, they came out with their notice of proposed rulemaking a couple weeks ago on September 7th, and basically excluded school buses as well as emergency vehicles from any regulation. So very interesting to find that. And basically they cited cost as number one reason. The technology, adding those to especially new school buses that we've seen increase by 25-30% over the last couple of years. Then there's the aspect of, do you retrofit? Again, this is for school buses that have seatbelts, lap shoulder seatbelts. The burden on bus drivers, potentially, if the alarms are going off, what are they supposed to do about it? We've talked a lot about policies for seatbelt usage. If you're going to have seatbelts out there, the school district needs to ensure that there's a usage policy. How does that impact the driver? What's the training on the students? What happens if a student unbuckles during the ride? So we've talked to a lot of school districts about how they're handling that. And a lot of these school districts are voluntarily adding the seatbelts. So we know that there's probably more, and there hasn't been a study on this. It's something that we can try to dive into. But in terms of the school buses that have seatbelts out there, just anecdotally, it seems that a lot in states that don't have a law. So we know school districts are voluntarily adding these. They are, using different methods to try to ensure usage. Usually it has something to do with the school bus driver at the beginning of the route, especially when they're leaving school, when they have all kids on at one time. Hey, I'm not starting this bus till everybody clicks. They buckle up, he takes off. There's no way to really govern if the kids are taking it off during the ride. Some school districts are looking at video and going that way. But, NHTSA was looking at it and saying, hey, this is just an undue burden on school bus drivers if we mandated this for school buses. And then they also mentioned compartmentalization, that, those high padded seat protections, even for the unbelted. And we know, in rollovers and side impacts, compartmentalization can fail. But for those reasons, NHTSA said, hey, we're not going to push this for school buses. But, one of the things that jumped out to me is, I'm working on this article on alternative transportation and TNCs for school transportation. We've seen this rise precipitously, really based on or due to the school bus driver shortage. So what about the impact on those vehicles? Now, this is something that would go to the automakers, right? If NHTSA publishes a final rule, it would start to go into effect 3 years after that date. So this is something that really would fall on the manufacturers. I have reached out to a couple of providers just to get their thoughts. Haven't heard back yet. This is still pretty hot off the presses from NHTSA. But definitely, one of those issues that school transporters should keep an eye on. A lot of school districts are utilizing more of their in-house vans and sedans also for transportation of students, whether they be students with IEPs or protected by a McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act.
Might be interesting to get reaction too, Ryan, at the TSD conference in Dallas coming up November 15th through the 20th. I feel like this will be an interesting conversation. I know we have some panels we're working on developing around this subject matter, so might be good to kind of include this in the conversation and get reaction from the audience. I know, guys, if you haven't signed up yet for the conference, definitely do so. We have our early bird registration ending on October 13th. We can save some money on your registration, come down to Texas, get some special needs training, always hot topics like this to kind of check out, which is great. But Ryan, these are always important things because we look at things like the Ohio situation, right? There's an accident, there are fatalities. Are students buckled? Are they not buckled? Does the insurance company want to know that people are buckled, that they got unbuckled? I don't know. There's the safety aspect to it, but I feel like maybe that's more of a liability thing that we're looking at. Everybody's trying to exonerate themselves from liability here. And that equals basically who's going to pay, right? So these are all very interesting factors when you look at technology and how they assist in that kind of safety process. So
Absolutely.
It'll be very interesting. Now, I know you had an update too for us on the Ohio working group. There's been a lot of movement on that, some legislation being proposed. There's been a lot of implications about safety belts being put on school buses. Again, not a surprise. This is the reaction. This is kind of the bigger conversation about what could come of this accident and what are the kind of ramifications and how can it affect the safety of school buses.
Absolutely. So the federal bill that we've seen reemerge from this tragic rollover and ejection crash that happened last month, that's the School Bus Safety Act, which we've seen a few times. Tammy Duckworth, the senator from Illinois, has been pushing that for several years now, going back to 2017-18. So she's joined Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio with that bill. So they're trying to, push that, which, is looking at seatbelts, but also event data recorders, automatic emergency braking systems, which, by the way, NHTSA is looking to standardize that as well. Electronic stability control, fire suppression systems, on and on. So that came back. We haven't seen any laws or any bills yet in Ohio, but that's really what this working group called by Governor Mike DeWine is looking to get information on. Do they push forward with a law? But what was interesting to me, at least, from the working group, this first working group meeting last week, was there was really no conversation about seatbelts. We know that the next meeting on September 25th, they'll turn more to seatbelts. Dr. Kristen Poland, who heads the Office of Highway Safety for the National Transportation Safety Board, will be speaking to the members during that meeting, and a lot on the NTSB investigations of school bus crashes. And we know NTSB is a big proponent of seatbelts. But this first meeting really focused a lot on school bus drivers, the driver shortage, licensing, training, the requirements for the vehicles. So that really stood out because they really seemed to be trying to take a nuts and bolts approach to school bus safety and trying to investigate and discuss anything and everything. So the school bus driver shortage was really the topic du jour for this first working group meeting. A lot of discussion. We have the Ohio Association for People Transportation represented. We have the Ohio School Bus Mechanics Association. We have the Ohio Department of Public Safety that is running this meeting, the Ohio Highway Patrol, several school districts, school bus driver, a parent, talking about this important issue. So head over to stonline.com. You can read more about it. But what I really liked was Andy Wilson, who's the director of Ohio Department of Public Safety, started this meeting off talking about the school bus safety record. And he mentioned that the death of 11-year-old Aiden Clark on August 22nd, that was the first onboard school bus fatality in Ohio since 2010. He said that during that span, there's been 3 other deaths related to a school bus crash, and those were motorists in other vehicles. And oftentimes they're impaired. They hit the school bus. So, it was good to see the school bus safety record mentioned front and center. So we'll see how this group moves forward. I know there's 5 meetings at least that are promised part of maybe 6. So again, the next one is coming up on September 25th, and they'll dive more into the seatbelt issue.
Yeah, good stuff, Ryan. And speaking of safety, we got a message from our sponsor, Vera Mobility, Crossing Guard Solutions. Guys, if you're concerned about safety for your students at school bus stops, are you struggling to force illegal passing incidents? Vera Mobility Crossing Guard Solution can help. Designed specifically for school bus safety, this turnkey solution reduces stop arm running and provides end-to-end support for transportation departments, school officials, and law enforcement. Crossing Guard safety programs are violator funded, so there's no upfront cost to your school district or company. Visit veramobility.com/government to customize your school bus safety package today. That's VERRA mobility.com/government. Let's zero in on safety and keep our kids safe. All right, we're back with some more headlines. Ryan, inflation, it seems to be going up, man. I mean, we hear headlines about it. We're starting to see the actual, price index rising, right?
Yeah. So saw a Market Watch article last week that noted that the producer price index, or PPI, so that's the costs for doing business. A lot of energy and transportation rolled up under the PPI. It rose 0.7% in August. That was about double what was projected to be the figure. It was supposed to be 0.3%. So, again, driven by higher energy costs. At the same time, the consumer price index rose. Both the PPI and CPI, that was the largest spikes in the last 14 months. So that gave some pause, but it was interesting that amid this, Goldman Sachs still reported that the likelihood of a recession over the next 12 months is just 15%. So they're looking at the Fed, projecting anyways that the Fed is unlikely to raise interest rates any higher. We'll see, when the Fed reconvenes with its next board meeting. But we do know that prices at least remain high. Inflation is persisting, at least somewhat. We're seeing this, and student transportation professionals are seeing this every day with the bills that are coming across their desk, right? I mentioned earlier that with new school bus vehicle purchase prices, increasing 25-30% even more over the last year. Hearing still about a lot of supply chain constraints. I was talking with a student transporter the other day who was mentioning that a lot of problems still getting school bus orders. And if you're a district that's buying 150 buses, a year, you're obviously going to be moving up to the top of the list to get those buses. Everybody else that's maybe buying a couple a year, they're falling down to the bottom. And so getting those buses is still an issue. Still seeing chassis problems in terms of getting the availability. Haven't heard too much on the Type A. I know that, there was this letter that the National School Transportation Association sent recently to Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, asking to kind of, release the hounds, if you will, and make ambulance and small Type A school bus chassis more readily available. Haven't seen too much more about that, but the general indication is that just generally school bus, large or small, it's harder to get those chassis, harder to get some of those components, so that OEMs can turn them around on a more timely basis.
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, many of the supply chain partners that I've talked to, I definitely feel are, they're in a good place. They're getting the vehicles out the door. Now we'll see, as we've seen with a lot of the federal funding from all the grants coming from the Clean School Bus Act. We're really going to see if there's an amplification of ordering when this next round of I guess the winners get announced, in essence. And then once they get announced, right, there's a time period when they can go out and start ordering that equipment and pipelining it. And it happens pretty much all at once, right? It's like a gold rush. Everybody is running after it, placing their orders. So we'll see. I mean, traditionally the school bus market has had a buying cycle, right? They're very cyclical cycles, but I feel like with a lot of the federal money being infused, that's kind of changing a little bit. So we'll see what it looks like going forward, but very exciting to see the market kind of on an uptrend. Definitely many school districts are seeing increased demand of ridership. We're glad to be back in school and definitely headed in the right direction as an industry right now. I feel like we've got some good momentum. We'll see if, inflation doesn't taper that off with rising prices. Because I know, you wrote an article recently in the September issue talking a little bit about the increase of prices and what's really the causality of that. And I think this is what everybody's facing, right? We definitely feel that the cost of doing business is going up and the budgets have to be aligned with that, right? Because new budgets basically have been released. Now we're having to deal with this uptrend of inflation. So how does that really impact school districts? What gets cut? Is it labor? Is it, the cost of a school bus driver driving a bus, a mechanic, management? They're just going to have to pay people more money simply because that cost of living is going up. You can't be behind the times or you're going to lose staff as a result. So there's definitely correlations there that I think you can draw. So it'll be interesting to see how the markets really drive the effect on school transportation and delivering service and yeah. So lots to see there, right? I know we had the California legislature had banned autonomous trucks. Not sure we really see autonomous school buses, but maybe how we see school buses interacting with other vehicles that are autonomous on the road. I always thought that was an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. So the last week, California legislature ended their legislative session, and one of the bills that went to Governor Newsom's desk, and at this recording, it had not been signed into law, but Governor Newsom has previously publicly indicated support for it, that would ban autonomous trucks on the roads in California. So commercial trucks. Obviously, we've talked a lot about autonomous school buses, and nobody in the industry supports no adult on a school bus anymore. That's just not feasible. You have the child supervision standpoint, but it's interesting to see some of the backlash, and it's a safety issue, right? I think there's been such high profile incidents that have happened, not necessarily just with trucks, but also in passenger vehicles. You've seen, several incidences that have happened up in the Bay Area in California with Teslas, these self-driving Teslas. And I know, Google had its self-driving program that was working on, and there were some issues with that. So definitely autonomous vehicles holds, a lot of promise for the larger general public. But there remains to be a lot that needs to be done. It was interesting too, at the same time, there was a House committee meeting, the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure met on autonomous trucks last week. So, a lot of discussion there where on one hand, a lot of discussion about the national truck driver shortage. It mirrors a lot of what we've been talking about and seeing in school buses. The American Trucking Association was there, talked about needing 1.2 million truck drivers over the next several years. Where are these people going to come from, right? And we're looking at school buses and being like, wait, we need some of those same folks. So there's a lot there to unpack. Again, a lot of safety concerns. There was some autonomous truck manufacturers there. There was some highway safety advocates there as well. So there's a lot that remains to be seen on how this will work. We know that school buses, yes, we don't want those to be autonomous, but we can't just say, oh, this doesn't apply to us, because if everything else on the road is becoming autonomous, how does that impact the school bus, the school bus driver? We know we have advanced driver assistance systems they're becoming more and more prevalent on the newer models of school buses. IC Bus makes basically all of their ADAS standard now. It's optional in a lot of the other school buses. But you got to reach this tipping point, right? Where, this stuff is really only going to work the way it's intended once all vehicles on the road have these systems. They have to be able to communicate with each other. Look at a lot of what we've been writing about in terms of cellular vehicle to everything technology. There's a lot of promise out there with alerting motorists about upcoming school bus stops, looking at speed limiting, looking at, making things more efficient for school buses in terms of intersection green light priority. This stuff is great. It looks good on paper, and it holds a lot of promise again. But we really need to get to the point when all of these beacons out there, the GPS, the sensors are on all vehicles and on all buildings and on all signage, and everything for this stuff to really come together and work. And this is years and years down the road. Now, technology is still moving at breakneck speed. So you just imagine, what's going to be possible a few years from now. Look how far we've come over the last several years. There's things that are happening right now that we couldn't even have dreamt of, 10, 15 years ago. So again, a lot of promise, but a lot of issues to wrap your head around and look at your operation and say, how does this impact us? How does this impact our driver training? Knowing that we still need school bus drivers behind the wheel. But it was pretty interesting to me that one of the leading arguments for autonomous trucks was to solve the labor shortage.
Seems like a reach, Ryan. That seems like a reach, right?
Yeah, it does. I think we have politics and politicians, looking at the rosiest outcome. And certainly, there is a lot of money being invested in these technologies. So
it's far from a quick fix, right?
No.
I mean, the technology just isn't fully baked yet. It's still in development. We all can agree. It's come. Yeah, maybe it's like the Back to the Future. The car just driving on its own. But we got a lot of years before that happens, and we'll wait and see.
And it's certainly, but have these conversations now in your school districts. Have these conversations now with your OEMs, your dealers, knowing that, yes, again, the school buses hopefully will never be autonomous fully. But there's autonomous elements of operations. Look at, railroad crossings, for example. How can technology automate certain operational characteristics to make things even more safe? So those kind of conversations. And again, like what I was mentioning earlier, how will the school bus of tomorrow interact with all of these vehicles that are, quote unquote, autonomous?
Yeah. Well, great conversation, Ryan. We're going to head over to Taylor and Todd. We're going to talk about what it takes to be that top transportation team. But before we get there, we have a message from Transfinder. Well, the votes are in and STN Expo attendees have spoken. Transfinder was overwhelmingly selected as the best software and best hardware for 2023 at STN Expo in Reno, Nevada. Yes, you heard that right. For the first time ever, Transfinder received the Innovation Choice Award for best hardware. And for the second year in a row, Transfinder has won the best software award, adding to numerous past awards Transfinder has won for its software products. Transfinder's move into hardware was driven by client demand. Transfinder now provides the tablet, the mounts, the card reader, and more as part of its one partner, one solution approach. Guys, you can learn more by visiting transfinder.com or calling them at 800-373-3609 or email them at getplus@transfinder.com and make sure you put STN podcast in the subject line.
Hey guys, it's Taylor here. I am back with another awesome guest for the podcast, another top transportation team winner. So very excited to jump into this conversation. But we have Todd Livesay here. He's the Director of Transportation with Franklin Township Community School Corporation in Indiana. So hello, Todd. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Todd, before we kind of jump into the whole conversation about your district, can you tell us a little bit about you? How did you get into transportation and what kind of your career path has been?
Yeah, so I have probably an unusual career path for a transportation director. I've kind of always been in the world of transportation ever since I got a business degree in 1999. But I had gone out and I had trained to be a pilot for a while. And some things happened with 9/11, et cetera, where that didn't quite work out. So I moved from that transportation mode to the railroad, and then I was a railroader for quite a while. So I did that, and I learned a lot just about transportation in general, in particular safety and logistics, all those kinds of things. I was a conductor and I was a yard master with the railroad. And as I got older and I needed to be home and not at a hotel 3 and 4 days a week, I was able to transition into the school district, which was fantastic for me because my kids go here. My whole life is here at Franklin Township. So to be able to parlay that transportation experience from other industries into the school bus industries been invaluable, and I'm just very fortunate. I've been here now going on 6.5 years. Plan to be here till I retire.
Wow. So you really have a well-rounded perspective on all the modes of transportation. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very blessed. I always say planes, trains, and automobiles. I got it all half figured out anyway. So my mind just works in that way. They really all translate.
Mm-hmm. So when you were in the railroad industry, did you know kind of about the safety of school buses and what they have to do at railroads, or did you kind of learn that more as taking on the transportation role?
A little bit of both. Of course, I'm very aware of all the railroad laws and the things that have to be done at crossings. So I knew that all commercial vehicles had to do certain rules when they stop at railroad crossings. But yeah, definitely when I came here, one of the first things I did when I came here, especially knowing that I was going to be a leader for this group of people, I didn't feel like I could do that without knowing what they experienced themselves. So the first thing I did was actually go and get my commercial driver's license. I just felt like it wasn't fair for me to manage people if I didn't know what they were going through. So I'm getting a commercial driver's license in Indiana. It's really just like any other state. It's pretty robust training. It's very in depth. It's not easy. That's one of the big challenges, with driver recruiting. It's not an easy process, and it's very in depth. And luckily, I felt like I got a good education on the school buses through all that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you're in Franklin Township. And so I believe you said you're the fastest growing school district in your county. And that's Maryland County. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's Marion County.
Marion. Okay. All right. And then you noted that Brownsburg is the fastest growing in the state. So you guys are like neck and neck there, or what?
Yeah, we're probably about the same size. Brownsburg is in the county west of Indianapolis, but we're both in the same, both of us Both Brownsburg and Franklin Township, as school corporations, are in the same situation. They're both very, very good schools. And when you have a very good school system, you will have people that want to live in your township. And that's what's happened in both Brownsburg and Franklin Township. The schools are fantastic in both, and people are definitely trying to get here to live, take care of their kids.
What's the background of your guys' district? So, students transported, number of drivers. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but do you have some numbers off the top of your head?
Yeah, we have just over 100 school buses. We have about 110 CDL drivers. We transport on any given day roughly 8,000 students to and from school. Obviously, that includes McKinney-Vento students and all those types of things. We have, field trips all day long, midday trips all day long. The drivers here, one of the reasons they enjoy working here is there's plenty of opportunity. And if you want the hours, this is a place where you can get them.
Okay. So you were out in Reno for STN Expo for the top transportation team. So your district was selected. I believe there was 6 of them, and you guys were one of those 6. So what was that process kind of like, putting yourself out there? What did you learn? What was the team reaction?
I tell you, it was very humbling, to be honest with you. A lot of people came to me with congratulations and wanted to tell me what a good job I had done. And I was very quick to let them know that this is a team award, and I can lead by example, but it's this group of people that I work with day in and day out. They're such good people, and they're here really student-centric. They're here for the student first. And because of that, the culture is so good. If we take care of the students, everything else takes care of itself. And then out in Reno, it was just great. I would be wherever I was, people would come to me and say, "Hey, how did you do this at your district? How did you do this? How did you deal with this challenge? Oh, in my district, we have this going on with the culture." And it was just humbling. Everybody was asking me for advice. And a lot of it was just, I just thought, this is really I wish my team was here to answer these questions, because I really don't know. It's just a personality thing, and just a bunch of good people working for one common goal to take care of the students. And it was also just a learning process from the other winners. I'm listening to them on the stage, and I'm talking to them at the different places, and I'm thinking, wow, I need to do that too. And even people that were coming to me for advice that weren't winners, I would talk to them and I'd say, geez, that's a great idea. I should do that too. And I can't believe that's not working there, or maybe it is working there. So just to network with so many different people in different areas of transportation, it was incredible. I hope I can go next year.
Mm-hmm. And the session you're referring to is the Lunch and Learn, which was hosted by Transfinder. And so all the 6 winners were up there kind of talking. And one thing that stood out to me was your one word to describe your district is you use dedicated. So can you kind of expand on that a little bit more? Why is a culture so important? And why are, dedicated team members, the driving force behind a successful district?
Yes. So anyone can work anywhere and go in and clock in and just do a certain job or a certain task for 8 hours or whatever their shift is, and check the box that they've worked that day and they've made a paycheck, and that's their purpose. In our district, with our transportation team, from the routers to the bus monitors, to the bus drivers, to the mechanics, to the trainers, to the student management office, everyone here is totally dedicated to students. Now, we do talk about that during our initial interviews and things like that, but a lot of that came from the culture before I was ever even here, and I learned it from them. If you are dedicated to the students first, the students' safety, the students' academics, I think that's another piece that's a lot of times missed in the transportation equation. We talk about transportation and safety and this law and this rule and this policy, and this is the best thing for that. But a lot of times we forget to talk about academics. And that's another piece of the puzzle. Everyone here understands that our role here is to get these students to school safely, number one, but also in a good mind frame so they can start their academic day and have a successful day, and then get them home so they can get themselves ready for the next day. So again, just being totally student-centric and dedicated, it's what's created this culture and why we're known as one of the top transportation teams.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of, dedicated to students and, the administration side, your wife is a principal at the district. So you have kind of a different perspective too there where you can kind of see both sides of it. But can you talk about the importance of, building communication and collaboration with the school building side?
Yes, this is another thing I think that is missed many times in other districts when I hear conversations. Part of the whole equation in taking care of these students and student management is having that relationship with the schools. The first thing is you have to have a good relationship with the buildings and the principals and realistically the teachers and everyone on the logistics side. They need to know, hey, we need this in this parking lot when we do our arrival or dismissal, or here's the things that are important. Here's the things we can work together on. And we do that all the time, right? We compromise. We figure out what is the best way to load in, load out, and keep everybody safe. And then also, of course, with the student management, we work with the buildings and the principals. We work with the teachers. We work with the counselors. We work with the deans on those issues that do happen on the bus that we all, don't like to deal with, or the hard conversations with students and parents. Having my wife in the district, having my wife as a principal is really invaluable because I really see the school side of things and the operations side of things. So, we try to stay away from it at dinner time talk, but it's impossible. We spend a lot of time talking about, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? And she's a principal at one school, but it all translates over. So I really am able to connect the bridge between an operations department such as transportation and the building level. And I really think it's a big part of the culture because we have the support of this township and the buildings, unlike I hear a lot of my colleagues sometimes talk about. So I know that I can call that principal at any of the buildings here and ask for help and ask for a compromise or something to improve. Or I can just talk to them about, hey, what are your thoughts? What do you need from me? And they know that, and the teachers know that. The parents know that it is a really one for all school family here. And it really goes a long way with the driver support. The drivers know that the buildings support them. They know that the parents support them. And that's because you don't have this gap in communication between the buildings and the transportation department. They're really all sending the same message. We're doing student management the same way. And we're all basically fighting for the same goal every single day.
And that's huge because you hear a lot of the times the drivers especially feel like they're on their own island when it comes to schools in general. So I think having that communication, that collaboration, that's a huge piece of probably why you guys were selected as a top transportation team.
I 100% agree. And it also goes, to the top, from the very top too, from the district office and the superintendent. We get nothing but support. It's just a fantastic culture all around.
Mm-hmm. So looking at, this school year, and we can kind of talk about the first day of school in a second, but are you looking at any technology, or you guys have your eyes set on anything coming up here?
Yeah, we're always looking to raise the bar on technology. The easiest go-to answer for that question is just all the products that we use through Transfinder. They've been imperative in our growth over the last 5 years, especially. We're adding on their apps and the things that they make available from their. The biggest thing is the Stop Finder app. We started with that last year. And we've expounded on that. We have the whole thing now with the bus tracking, the parent communication. That's something we use absolutely nonstop. The other thing is the video equipment. Obviously, we need to have cameras on all the buses. Something we'd like to do soon is have the ability for the buses to automatically download video when they pull into the lot. Things like that. Obviously, the GPS, we use Zonar for that. Been very, very happy with that service. They've been really good to us, and we'll always expand on that. We use them for tracking. We use them for fuel efficiency, and they can integrate with Route Finder Plus, with Transfinder. So, we're always using all those apps, and I am definitely always looking for the next thing to improve.
Mm-hmm. So with the start of the new school year, how did this technology kind of help you streamline the first day? Were there any lessons learned, maybe any bumps in the road that you can smooth out, or was the technology super helpful in your first day of school?
Technology was absolutely imperative, 100% necessary for the first day of school. Everybody knows that the first day of school, really the first week of school, is generally controlled chaos. The main thing you worry about is losing a kindergartner, things like that. So that's your I would say your number one stressor in heart attack. So you got to have all the technology working. You have to be able to count on it. We start that process literally early in the summer. We have a checklist we go through. I've been here, like I said, 6.5 years now. That checklist every year grows. We think, why didn't we do that this year? And every time we think we have it all, we think of 10 more things that should have been on the checklist. So you're always learning. The technology piece with Route Finder Plus through Transfinder, we've been able to, the routing is so easy. We're able to do that quickly, which is really, really important. We don't really get the accurate student import from the from the student management system until the first week of July. So we really only have about 2 weeks to get the routes ready and get the communication out. And that's where Stop Finder has really been a great tool, as well as getting the communication out. We can send an instant message to any parents immediately. They know their routes are ready. They know who their drivers are, and they know that we're ready to go, ready to support them.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys, is it a month now or so since school started?
We started on August 1st. So we're looking at about 6 weeks. Yeah, we start early.
Okay. So before we wrap up, have you guys been hit at all with the driver shortage?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
We always need more drivers. There's no doubt about that. But we are fully staffed. We always need substitute drivers because bus drivers are superheroes in all of our opinions, but they also get sick, and filling the substitute driver role is quite a bit harder. That's another thing that's been helpful with Route Finder Plus and Transfinder. We've been using their Wayfinder app as well, and using tablets. That's a big plus for a substitute bus driver, not to have to shuffle paper around and be confused. It's just a legal GPS that they're able to use on the bus. But we do pretty well on the bus driver turnover and bus driver hiring. But we most definitely are always looking and always hiring. Just always want more to support everybody.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, let's end it on that positive note that you guys are sitting okay with school bus drivers.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Todd. I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing your insight. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate everything you do there. And it's been great to talk to you. And once again, thank you for everything.
A special thanks to Ryan Gray, Taylor Ekbatani. Todd, thanks for coming on. Great conversation. Congratulations on being awarded a top team. Congratulations to your team as well. Franklin Township Community School Corporation, Indiana. Guys, we can all strive to be awesome like them and to really be a top team and really foster that culture. Guys, we appreciate our sponsors today, Transfinder, the Propane Education Research Council, and Vera Mobility. Don't forget, visit stnonline.com for all the news and analysis around the school transportation industry. Get the latest headlines, updates, special reports, the latest magazine. Go check out that September issue if you haven't read it yet. It's really got great content, great features. You'll learn a lot, really heavy on the technology side of things this month. So we're really looking forward to seeing what we have in store. We got some conferences headed our way. Got the NAPT conference coming up in October, as well as the TSD conference. You guys can check that out at tsdconference.com. Sign up today, register, lock in that early bird rate. Nation, you can always listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. We'll see you next week. We love you.